All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming. Welcome. This obviously is a different venue from last time. If you can't hear me at the back, there are seats at the front as well that are fully open. So if my voice isn't traveling as much, feel free. Come sit at the front. So welcome to Building Bridges. So this is an event that we do every month, at the end of every month on a Thursday, where we come together as a collective community to talk about different topics. Sometimes we have particular experts coming in and talking about their particular area of expertise. So I did write a speech so I don't go over time, so I'm going to do that. So again, thank you, everyone. So our event aims to create a space that encourages open, honest, solutions-focused discussions and collaboration across the sector. So we're fortunate today to have a diverse and experienced panel, each bringing their own unique lens. We were supposed to have the head of Synapse's advocacy program, but he got called away to a hearing this morning. So he sends his apologies. What I will be doing is catching up with him after, having a conversation with him and recording it for everyone so we can post that up for everyone on our LinkedIn when it time comes. If you guys have any specific questions about legislation for him, let me know. I can work it into the conversation. But we also have some clinical practice experience, plan management experience, frontline service delivery, and so on. So in a moment, I'll invite the panelists to share their experience and their knowledge and talk a little bit about the changes from their perspectives. Now, the aim for that is for you to understand what level of experience they have. So when you guys ask a question, you know who can potentially best answer your query, if that makes sense. So what I might do is pass it over to Layla, who's just going to introduce care to you. Ivani is off unwell today, so Layla's stepping in kindly to introduce care to you.
You guys put me on spot. All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming. My name is Layla. I'm the Service Delivery Manager with Care to You. We are one of the main hosts that's normally Ivania that does. So this is the fourth time. Thank you for coming. So basically, Care to You, we are one of the many NDIS providers. We mainly focusing in cell and THC participation. Our goal is to support the people with disability to live independently, safely, and with dignity. We have about 7 houses across Sydney, mainly 5 houses in northern Sydney. There is 1 house in Aircraft, and there is a huge apartment in Maribel. We have some really few vacant apartments that let, so you always can go on the website. You have a look. If you have any questions, any referral, any participants, high intensity, people with mental disability, we do that a lot. So please reach out to me or Akamo for it. Hey, Maggie sitting downstairs. She didn't want to do the speech. So she's the assistant manager. So normally we do actually the 15-minute introduction to everyone here. 15 seconds. But today we don't have time to go to do that. So I might just pass it here to panelists and then they can carry on.
Go for it.
Thank you. So my name is Howard. I am one of the hosts for the Building Bridges Network. So thank you for everyone coming. Because usually we have it in downstairs in our clinic, but as people get more and more support, we just get more squishy. So lucky that thank you for that building mentions. So they happy allow us to use the space for today. So I just do some basic housekeeping rules. So the toilet is when you go out to that door, is actually go to that side and turn left. So it's a brand new toilet, so it's actually quite nice. The other thing is we do have food usually provided, but this time thank you for no. Yep, over there to provide us food, but then the food, because he want to keep it fresh, so he would come in after the section a bit later on. So make sure you're all fresh. So I think that's about it. So like I said, unfortunately we have to cancel the 15 seconds introduction, but we would like to say thank you for our sponsor, Noor, which is providing us with the food for today. So we allow him to have some time to promoting his service. So thank you, Noor. Thank you.
Food shouldn't be too long, hopefully. Give it out. Yeah. Right. Look, many years ago, there was a question that was put forward to me about 13, 12 years ago. And it rocked my world. Absolutely changed my life. Changed everything I did, changed the way I wake up and start my day and just And the question was, Lord, if you were to remove your job title your job description, and the companies you've worked for. Who would you be and who are you? And it shook me. Absolutely shook me. I looked back at everything I had done in the past and I removed all those things. And it got me thinking, who am I? What's my purpose? What am I doing here? Why am I here to begin with? Once I discovered that, and once you begin to discover that and navigate through that question and you reach the end, whatever job description you have, whatever title you have, whatever industry you're in, whatever company you work for, will not matter. Because you'll be driven. You'll have a why. And often in this industry, in particular, and I'm quite new to it, I found that we are defined by our titles. And sometimes, unfortunately, who we work for. Right? I'm a coordinator. I'm a provider. I'm a therapist. But these are the things that should not define us. Right? Shouldn't define you. What should define you is what you're about and your why. And what you wake up every single day for. Now, I've been blessed. 12, 13 years ago, I had that question put forward to me, and it gave me a shock of a lifetime. And once I navigated through to the end, it allowed me to see my purpose. And so I put that question forward to you guys. If you were to remove all those things from your life, your job description, your title, and all the companies you've worked for, who are you? And again, I've been blessed. I had that question, and since then I've been able to set up some not-for-profits which feed the homeless now in the city every single weekend. I was able to set up another not-for-profit with a couple of friends of mine that distribute educational items around Australia for free. I was able to set up this beautiful club, with basketball that merges some of my passions with helping the youth and sport together. And then he led me to where I work now, doing the exact same thing. Nothing changed. From where I was 13 years ago, what I wake up and strive for, to exactly what I'm doing now. All these, I've worked for about 3 to 4 different companies and 3 to 4 different projects, and they all have different names. But the goal was always the same. So for me, personally, my why and my get up every single day is I want to be a reason, not just to change my local area, or not just to benefit the city or the state or the country, but the entire world. And for some, it's a bit far-fetched, but I'm a bit of a spiritual guy. Yeah. Thankfully, at that time, I went through a bit of a spiritual awakening as well, and it helped me shape who I am today. So I'm a big believer in thinking that and knowing that I can affect the world and I can impact the world. So normally we'd go through and introduce ourselves and tell each other, well, I'm so-and-so from this company and I'm so-and-so from that company and this is my title. However, I'll ask you guys, when the food arrives and when you're networking together and introducing each other, don't talk about where you work or your title. Talk about who you are and what you believe in, because that's the person we all want to be being. It doesn't bother me who you work for too much. It doesn't bother me too much what your title describes. I want to deal with you. That's what this industry should be about, and that's our why. So I'll hand it back to Emanuel. We can carry on.
Thank you, Noel. Okay, I won't stand the whole time, but just to preface the next section, so I'm going to ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves for you guys so you understand who they are, what their experiences are, and their view on the current changes and the current climate of what we're all kind of facing. After that, I'm going to open it up to everyone straight away. So if you guys have got questions and things that you want to know, please yell them out. I've got some people around the back in case we have to pass around some mics or anything like that. But if you've got a question or you got it ready, put your hand up. Someone will give you a mic because we are recording the event as well. So what I'm going to do now is with Peter. We're going to get him to introduce himself, where he's from, and some information about what his thoughts are on the current situation.
So I'm better write your rules straight away here.
I'm glad you have me, mate.
Sorry, Noah.
No, I guess for you, mate.
side feeder from the Cata Group and Enrichability. My background, my expertise is in financial space, so financial viability. If you've got those questions, we'll be one of those people that can guide in and help answer some of your queries on that. We know that there's been a tremendous amount of change pushed through NDIS each and every 6 months. It's just another bucket of changes. But probably the thought that I'll put into your heads is 2024 and 25 were different to every other year. We won't see, in the last 18 months, we haven't seen that 30% of packages released that made it easy for everybody to pick up new clients previously. That's gone. So many more providers coming into the sector. It's difficult to pick up that new participants. So actually competing against each other for participants. And there is a bit of a trickle from NDIS on new participants. So financial viability has become one of the most talked about things. It was mentioned 6 months ago by the Shadow Minister for Disability, and now it's a hot potato with the current Minister for Disability to understand what we're all facing. But there's no relief from NDIS because revenue packages, the package size is being dropped down, so we've got pressure from reduced revenues. We've got pressure from reduced new packages coming through the system, and then in the normal course of events, we will lose participants as well to other competitors. So what does that mean for us? Well, it means there's a reckoning coming shortly, and it's probably going to become very visible at the end of this year. And we'll see a lot of providers being squeezed out of the marketplace. And then we need to talk about what is going to make us viable, what is going to give us that chance to survive this process. Because once that rationalise happens, more clients will be available, right? Exiting providers, everybody gets more participants. But you have to be able to survive that process. So in my space, it's all about the back office. How do you become extremely efficient when you're losing revenue? You have to contain cost or reduce cost. And that's where we have some experience. We deal with over 100 providers, supporting them in their back office functions. We see their accounts all the time. And you have to ask yourself the question, do you have visibility over the right things to warn you early enough to act ahead of a disaster? And I'll just put that to you and pass over to Earl.
Hi, everyone. The team invited me today with two hats on, actually. So I represent a charity, a not-for-profit, national not-for-profit called, it's a pig body, Leukodystrophy Australia. So we represent people that have this group of diseases called leukodystrophy. It's basically a group of neurodegenerative genetic diseases that cause basically your nerves to stop being as effective as they are. So that means that you can't talk eventually and see and hear. There's a number of diseases within the group, and the conditions affect kids and they affect adults. So we represent between 300 and 2,000. There's a couple of thousand people around Australia that have the condition. We probably have about 300 active members of the group, and we call them members. They're just people we support and their families. So I guess I'm involved with that organisation because I have a lived experience. And when I thought about lived experience, and I know from speaking to people in the sector, I reckon, can I ask anyone who has a lived experience with disability to put your hands up? Yeah? Yeah, so it's about a third. And lived experience means family member, could be a close friend. So I think, I reckon nearly half the people here might have that lived experience. So my lived experience is I have a daughter who was born with one of these rare conditions. She never walked, she never talked, she never crawled, but she's the most important teacher in my life. So we're talking about life. She taught me everything there was to know about disability and more. So she lies in her bed. She's 33. She was bedridden. She's been bedridden since she's been 13 or 14. She's peg fed, but the most important thing, and again, from what Noor was saying, those nuances, the important things about life, her smiles, those are the things that are the most important communications for me, those sorts of social things. And she's my teacher. So my background is software. I came from a software industry. In fact, we did things with golf events. We did all sorts of crazy things with software. But so I ended up in this sector later in life, after being a member of the organization, being a committee member, eventually becoming president. And obviously the connection was through my daughter. And then I ended up getting into the sector and formed a business called Only Care. So that's the other hat I wear. So Only Care has been operating since the NDIS hit Sydney. So about 7, or our part of Sydney, that metro. It's about 7 or 8 years. And so we provide care, high care typically, but we do the whole spectrum of supports, daily activities and social. But our expertise tends to be more in clinical, that's actually a picture of my daughter at the top there, was more just meant to demonstrate high care. But yeah, we have clients, a lot of clients with Huntington's disease and MS and Parkinson's and neurodegenerative type conditions. That's sort of our expertise. We have RNs that work in the company. So I guess that's the hats that I wear inform my experience in the sector. So I've made a lot of notes. Shall I talk through this now, or do you want to panel it? Some of the challenges we all face.
Maybe just a...
Yeah. So I'll try and sum up the challenges. So there's obviously the recent Section 33, which were released in May. So the funding period related challenges. There were the support lists that were released in October, which are challenges for participants and certain providers as well. So they're challenges, I guess, challenges in trying to manage how those things work. So that's the challenge we all face. How do we work? There's a lot of lack of information. That's one of the challenges I've found, that I think many as well. There's lack of info from the NDIS on how these things work. The funding periods, I guess Milena would have more to say, because you'd be seeing lots and lots of people going through that. But as a provider, they're starting to trickle through. From May the 19th, we start to get certain clients that are getting new plans going on pace. So from that perspective, many providers, not plan managers, but many other providers, or not support coordinators, but many other providers will start to feel the effects and learn. And those participants are, unfortunately, I don't mean it in a bad way, but they're the crash test dummies. Unfortunately, it's a hard way to put it, but I want to be pretty blunt about it. It's really hard, and I think the NDIS should have piloted this. Do you agree? It should have been piloted, and like it just got released. We spoke about it a few months ago. You said you really only found out the detail a week or two before.
The same time as everyone else found out, we found out as plan managers. So it was on the Thursday. They released it on the Monday, and then they were like, and go.
They talked about it in October or whenever it was, late in the year, but they didn't release.
We had no news.
Software developers also didn't really get much heads up as well.
No one did.
So for me, plan periods are challenging, and I guess they're very challenging for plan managers and support coordinators. But for me, how could they have fixed it? Well, they could have started with 12-month plan periods, basically what we're used to now, and piloted that way. It's a bit late now, but I guess my point was many of us are probably starting to feel some of those things. But I think one of the biggest challenges for a provider of high needs, where you've got clients that are progressing and there's sudden changes and we're waiting on reviews to happen, they're very slow, and monthly funding periods are a challenge. I think the biggest challenge for us is the visibility of what happens. So, for example, under PACE, there's no service bookings anymore. We don't know what we actually rely on support coordinators mainly, if a client has one, if a person has one, to get a visibility of who else is delivering services to our clients. We don't have that. It's like Russian roulette. I don't understand why there's no service bookings. So, and I'm not really being negative. I'm just, I guess, stating some facts. So those are the challenges. As I said, poor responsiveness in, NDIS announced a 1300 number for providers. The 1300 number is not anything different. It's the 1-800 number, isn't it? It's exactly the same number. You just get diverted to 1-800. So there's a lot of challenges, but so I've written down, sorry, I tend to ramble, so I've written my notes here. So as Peter said, good financial management is really important. Easier said than done. But, the things that you need to do. So what we do as a business, we really, I guess because of software background, we focus on tech and fancy spreadsheets and doing all sorts of things. We can't just rely on the rostering systems. They're not all perfect, but really doing as much as we can to track what's going to happen before things might happen. If you've got a client that's maybe going over budget, track it before. Do your invoicing quickly. Don't do a weekly invoice. The NDIS waits to see what's in someone's plan, as we all know. And if you're invoicing weekly, but you're delivering services every day, and they're tracking to run out, invoice daily, because the NDIS will see those funds dropping down. Just little things like that, using tech, schedules of support. That's a big thing for us. We go to literally to the day. We know how many public holidays there are in a year, but just really budget it out really well. Work with the support coordinators and the plan managers. Just get that visibility. So even though PACE doesn't have service bookings, you can use these sorts of providers to help you. So I think that's the other thing, working with the partners like these. And again, not every participant has a support coordinator, but that for us is a really important piece of the puzzle, because without that visibility, it is difficult. And so as Peter said, you've got to really just be on the ball with things. So communicate with these sorts of partners. I think those are the things. The two other things to mention, data. So we all know about evidence. It's the big thing now, evidence. I'm sure many of us are providing a lot of data collection, reporting it really well, and then what do we find? They don't even listen. But still, I think what we've got to all do is just step up. Just step up the level of quality in what we're doing. And over time, hopefully, I guess unfortunately, we can't all control our own destiny with the NDIS. We're a bit reactive to what goes on. But I think just keep stepping up the quality of what you're doing in the office. And lastly, two more things, keeping up with information. So I think I know there's lots of these sorts of networking things going on, but this one is a really good one because it's pretty independent. You've got different providers coming on speaking. You've got lots of different people attending. There's a lot of networking that goes on, and I know that they've got some more initiatives around what they'll be doing in future events. So I think that's really important, and I know that there's going to be forums, post-event, online forums to continue conversations. So I think these sorts of things are really good. And it's not just us who have the skill. There's probably people here who have as much, if not more, in many respects. So I think encouraging the feedback from people as well. And lastly, sorry, Lambler, listen to the participants, listen to their stakeholders. I think that's the advocates, the friends, the lived experience, I think, is back to that first thing, is what drives us all. And I think listening to that and going with that, I think hopefully we'll all be successful. That's me.
Thank you. I'm going to skip me because...
I'm not going to stand up because I've got a big belly. It's fine. Thank you, Earl. I think, again, with the lived-in experience, so what brought me into this industry is my dad got diagnosed with multiple sclerosis when I was 14. So I became a full-time carer for him, and then my mum got diagnosed with a psychosocial disability. So I have one parent with a physical, one where she looks 100% normal, but comes with a whole array of things. So I was full-time carer at 14 and then kind of got into other industries and things like that. And then at 25, found myself in the NDIS industry and it sucked me in and I cannot leave. So that's what first brought me into it, but I absolutely love what we do. So my name's Milena. I'm the State Relationship Manager for Plan Partners. I look after all of New South Wales and ACT. I'm also in charge of Plan Tracker as well. So I'm the State Relationship Manager for Plan Tracker too. So yeah, it's my job to work with support coordinators, with service providers, even participants. In regards to the changes, plan managers, we've absolutely copped it. We have copped it pretty hard and fast. So financially, we've copped it. When it comes to the Section 33 changes, we had no heads up at all. So we got told on the Thursday, and then Monday it was like launch. and the expense. So not only did they significantly cut our funding, we had to pay a significant amount to get our dashboards up to scratch, just so service providers, participants, everyone can actually see the breakdown. So we're kind of running behind at the moment to catch up. So it's been hectic for us. Not only have we had that, we've had to scramble. We've just released our dashboard where you can actually see the releases, the funding releases. You can see the breakdown. We also get zero clarity from the NDIA. So we get zero transparency, zero clarity. But then they say, if you make a mistake, it's on you and you guys are going to have to pay it back and you're going to pop it. So they've taken our funding. They've kind of thrown things at us and then given us no clarity. So we're in a pretty tricky situation at the moment. Us being the size that we are, we're actually quite lucky that we are at the size that we are. We've been plan partners. I actually do really feel for the smaller providers and the smaller players that don't have the ability to be able to put money into things to try and just quickly fix it and adapt. Our passion is we do really want to work with service providers, support coordinators and participants to be an education piece. We don't want to be the people that just pay your invoice and say yes or no. We want to say to support coordinators, here's a heads up. This is what you need to do to get paid. Or now that you've got participants on the Section 33 changes, you can't now send us a year's worth of invoices for us to be able to backdate and pay. So we really try and get on the front foot to be that education piece to go, let's try and help you because we don't want to say no. We don't want to have to reject invoices. So we really try and be that education piece first, pay your invoices second. So we've got our dashboard up and running at the moment, thank goodness. I've got lots of grey hairs from there. And we do have sections where you can actually quarantine funds and things like that within those service periods. And then we're continuing to just consistently work on our dashboard, work on our services to try and keep up to date with everything. So, but our number one goal, again, is to be an education piece. We want to work with support coordinators, service providers, and we want to help you as best as we can with the information that we've been told. But we're kind of in the same boat as everyone else. We get no other special treatment or anything else like that. So hopefully I can shed a bit of light on there. But we're here to help everyone in the industry. We don't want to be the bad guys on there. Thank you.
Stand up. Okay, cool. So I forgot to mention one more housekeeping rules. But next time people come, it will be great to talk for park at the car park opposite the road because there's plenty more parking. Just walk across the road. Plenty of space there, so don't worry about spaces. Now, just do a quick introduction of myself. So I am an OT by trade. So I've graduated in 2007. So my previous life was working in health service, working in multiple big hospital and small hospital. I was one of the people wearing the very proud teal color health shirt. Is that right? So I started the NDIS business when it first started. So this is my 7 or 8 years since I started this global rehab service business. So I was lucky enough that I was working in public health systems, so I know how government implement changes to the systems, to the big organization, how it got layers by layers. And we're lucky enough that running a business right now to see all the financials and all the billion pieces and all the issues and things like that. So that is my background myself. Now, in terms of the most challenging bit for the NDIS changes for allied health sectors, it's obviously the decrease of the start out rate and also the travel fee. I think that impacts us the most. So if Tanner got questions they want to discuss later on, it's fine. Now, I just want to share my little visions of the price changes. Now, NDI has been quite harsh to allied health. A bit harsh to allied health, but that we kind of understand what's coming from. For example, so I remember last year they were talking about to slash off complete music and art therapists from the art and music therapy, complete from allied health, but then got some some back and forth and going back on. And even beforehand, there was a talk about some needs assessment to be conducted, so to get rid of the report and things like that. And now I think this time is for real for the using changes. I think it happened for us, which is for the whole NDIS history. That is the funding got cut. Now the fees affect the most, which is cut by $10 per hour. And so does the dietitians and dietitian, which also price got decreased as well. Now, the other thing is affect us the most, which I'm more than happy, you've got a question, more than happy to share more idea, is to cutting off half of the trouble fee. Now, that impact a lot of service, but what we're seeing is what my vision of NDIS trying to do is more than they want to localize the allied health service. I think that was what they're trying to do. So this is why they want to cut off the funding. So there is some strategies and there are some ideas we can talk about that. But if you've got questions, so yeah, please do. Okay.
So I'll just quickly, for anyone who doesn't know me, we're a support coordination service. My background, the way I got into this industry is 10 years ago I had a car accident, which changed my life. You probably won't notice it, but I got a hole in my femur. I was supposed to be a soccer player. Well, maybe. Anyway. And that kind of led me down a path of helping others going through difficult times and challenging times. So I went to uni, did a degree in social science and counselling, and ended up in logistics for a little while, actually, which really helped with organizational skill, and then ended up here. So I'm an operations guy. I love making things work, making them tick. I love tech. I love data. And I've spent a lot of time with Ability Connect in particular to really streamline our processes and systems to weather any future challenges. We kind of predicted that we weren't going to get increases, so we tried to be really efficient in how we operated so that we could help others. I'm very big with collaboration, so we do a lot of work with other providers, allied health, call support services to kind of all work together. So we only do support coordination, which is great. But one thing that I'm seeing across the industry at the moment, that's the most important thing, which I guess we can talk about, is if we're not all helping each other and solving solutions together, it's not going to work. So there's a lot of information or probably a lot of knowledge in this room. This is why we wanted to put this together to talk about that sort of thing. So we support over 600 participants, and I'm not saying that number to for any other reason other than the fact that we get a lot of access to reviews. So we do a lot of NDIS reviews. So we get a lot of data on what the NDIS is asking at any given point, and we can see changes before they announce them. So we can often see the questions that have been asked. Like, for example, there's now coming in on board, especially with a lot of LACs, where they're spending a whole hour and a half going through every micro detail of everyone's life, asking them very, very in-depth questions. And we're sitting there, why are you asking this? It's in the report. So we do get a lot of that. So what I try to do then is proactively solve those answers and those questions and those problems for participants in through changing reporting, working with others to see what their reporting looks like, making sure data is correct, making sure our systems can automate, whatever it is that the questions that are needed. So we're gathering it straight away. So we're not spending too much time on these items. But that's me. Any questions, go for it. I'm happy to answer. I'll talk all year, so I'm trying not to. So now what I really want to do is open it up. So please, anyone, you've heard what everyone is experiencing, so go for it.
Yeah, thank you. So question to
Yep.
the panel. Fantastic.
I'm Noah, and I don't like to say who I am because it sounds very cliche, but I really do genuinely love people. I think that's who I am. I work for an NDIS service provider. So we provide SIL, core, and we specialize in mental health and degenerative disease. So a lot of things that you mentioned, Earl, really resonate.
Introduce a business.
Businesses caring pathways. That would help. Thank you for that, Howard. Kudos to the organizers. Fantastic panel. Very helpful and awesome turnout. Love it. I've got 3 questions. I've got many more, but I'm going to stick with 3 questions at bullet point, if that's okay. So also my background is governance controls in financial services in software. So I'm sort of especially in tuned into that piece. The first question, and I think the most important for me, is what Peter talked about, which is, we can provide as good a service as we can. We can only charge so much, which makes the back end extremely important. How we track funds, how we make sure rostering is done in the most efficient way possible, how we stop leaks in the business, where do we see it? And I haven't been that long in the business, a couple of years, in this particular business. And we're about 15, 16, about to be 16 clients, so medium size. And that is a major issue for me. I'd like to learn a little bit more about some of the strategies that Peter talked about. And specifically, I've just started speaking to Chris over there. You can stand up, Chris, if you want. Not putting you on the spot. He's doing an AI. I just started working with him, which is really helpful. So I'm using his AI service to track a lot of these things for me. I mean, everybody's talking about AI. I think I really need to use it for my business. I just want to see how you do it. Do you use AI? Can the two work together? That's a sort of the crux of the first question. The second question is, changes normally happen, especially in large settings, transitionally. Do you see any major change that these small transitions are sort of leading towards in, say, 3, 4, 5 years? For the NDIS, where is it going to end up? Where is it going to settle, do you think? So these are, I think, the two questions. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say maybe Peter can answer the first one and then...
Yeah, all right. I'm going to shut up and start. Give Alice. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a good question, and size of the organisation is relevant in this conversation. So you need to figure out first who you are and what size you are. And we're a larger organisation and a not-for-profit. We have a board that is very focused on the key sector initiatives that could be coming up, and AI is right at the heart of that. Okay, so whether you're a small organisation or a bigger organisation, the one common thread is look at your process mapping and your hotspots. Okay, so they're different for every size organisation. So we all know where pressure points are not in, right? So rostering is a problem every day. You have people ringing in sick. You know that you've got to recruit people because you're losing people all the time. So there's a recruitment function, a compliance function, onboarding, and then you get turnover. They exit as fast as they come. So it just cycles around again and again. So where you have an organisation that's in tune with the nature of disability and those pressure points, because you've also got to pay your workers at the end of the day, they can serve to take the heat out by looking at your specific pressure points. If you go out to market and ask an AI company to come in and look at your entire process mapping, you're probably going to walk out with a $365,000 bill that you can't afford. Speaking from your experience, he's charging me $50 a month, so... Well, there you go. So, but if they can come in and look at the hot spots and see what you connect together, because if you're using rostering software, you're probably using a separate HR software, sets of payroll software, and they're not talking to each other. So the efficiency is to get that information to flow and to be able to put it in once and get it to land in all those different software pieces once. And then you're making sure you're the leanest, the most efficient you can be. That's probably where I'll stop on that one. But
let me just add in there, and if you are going to implement that, give yourself a grace period of it's going to take time to transition, to do all that stuff. So just make sure that your participants or anyone that's involved, you pick your timing right. So we've had to introduce that with some of our stuff. When you pick the timing wrong, it goes very wrong very quickly. So definitely, if you're going to introduce AI or a different thing, just really pick your timing, give yourself enough notice, and that way you
And your people management. Yes. The thing about AI is everybody immediately thinks it's replacing workers. It's not. It should be an assistance to your worker so that your worker can stay focused on, your admin staff can stay focused on the important things, right? Resolving participant issues, getting people onboarded as quickly as possible, making the journey easy for the support worker so that it becomes a very robust position. But it's aiding them. It is not taking away from them. So you're not likely to reduce staff out of the process, particularly as a smaller organisation, but you will build capacity. Right, each worker will be able to do more because they're not doing the garbage functions of re-entering the same information over and over again. And how frustrating is that? So, yeah.
So when you said 16 clients, you're talking SIL mainly? Is that?
Mainly, yeah.
Yeah. So we have another business that's SIL. So I know some of the challenges from a SIL perspective, and just filling up houses doesn't mean that you're going to make money. Sometimes we lose money. So matching residents is very important, not just matching in personality and fit, but in terms of budget. So, I guess we all know this, the SIL providers know particularly the challenges where you might have 3 residents and one of them is an active overnight, but the NDIS funds everyone 1/3 of a sleepover or something ridiculous like that. So I think getting back to tools, and I don't know if AI might solve these, but again, focusing on tools to allow there's a roster of care tool, but we use that. We built our own roster of care tool, which is a bit better. But what we do is we map on top of that a staffing rostering. So we actually, I think I'm talking about putting tools on top of tools to align not just what the sale and the revenue is, but what your costs to run your business are. So I think those things are things to look at. And like I said, I think I saw a few nods. Running a SIL, just filling a house doesn't make money. So you've just got to really get the matching right, get the budgets working really well. And then when someone leaves, you've got to start again, which is a challenge. But the other thing you mentioned about where things might go, who knows? But, with the government starting again and ministries, they're all now coming, NDIS and aged care are all under health now. And so people are talking about maybe over time they'll all be using similar, they'll all be based on the same system, accounting system, financial systems. You can imagine that government's going to save money if they align aged care and NDIS and health on similar tools. So I don't know if people agree if that might be something that'll happen down the track. I know the way the NDIS started was they were actually planning to build their own software from scratch. I know someone who was employed at the NDIS right at the very beginning. She's an IT expert, and she was specifying out the software. And then in came all the consultants, and they said, no, not going to build. Let's take the DSS system and back engineer it. And that's what Proda basically was. So they basically threw out all the design, which is building from scratch, again, software. I always say you can't unbake a cake. So you can't go after you bake the cake and add another egg, can you? That's where I think with Proda and those systems have gone, and maybe that's where PACE is. So I think they're now working on rebuilding as well.
That's certainly having a minister that operates for both aged care and disability together provides the government a huge opportunity to bring them together. Yeah.
Efficiencies, that's the name of the game.
Correct. And there's
not always good though.
Yeah, and we're seeing the SHADS award being re-implemented and simplified after they've managed to separate aged care from disability for the first time ever back 18 months ago. But now they have a plan to bring it back together under one stream with one set of pay rates. But you can see the broader implications of we've got a deregulated aged care price, but we've got a regulated NDIS price. The aged care price is running out of control. The cost to the government is increasing. Same with NDIS. They can't afford any blowouts on either side. So having it all under one minister gives them the opportunity to start to bring things together over coming years. But it won't be 1 or 2 years. It'll be a much longer term vision, I'd imagine.
Other changes you think might eventually settle?
Yeah, that's probably in this space, NDIS is a fraction better than aged care. I think the reforms will come to aged care and that will follow the NDIS framework. So it's a bit about cost containment on that front. So the pricing, if it aligns, it'll align. There's already talk about it aligning to NDIS rather than NDIS aligning to aged care.
I think the NDIS is, if you're talking costs, yes, but in terms of quality, I still think the NDIS is a bit of the Wild West because, aged care has grown and there's been royal commissions and there's a lot of experience there. I think we're still out there, dipping our toes in the water, and I think there's a lot.
And this is where the convergence will come. We've already got boards talking about it, okay? So if an organisation is involved in both, the boards are talking right now about how the aged care compliance issues are going to come at NDIS, right? So NDIS is going to pick up the ball on compliance. Financially, aged care will move more towards NDIS pricing. So different streams, different directions for different purposes, but you can see that there's an opportunity for convergence and for the government, their ultimate goal is to make it affordable long term. So squeezing, keep containing the price on both sides is very important. Getting the compliance right and the focus on quality businesses that are able to guarantee safe service to participants in aged care clients is universal. So you will see that pressure.
And to just echo,
Sustainability.
yeah, and to echo from an operational perspective, I think you got to know your business. You can't just implement technology thinking it's just going to work and there's going to be a blanket solution. Every organization is different. For example, obviously I did it myself because we try to keep quite thin in the way we operate. So I spent a lot of time understanding from beginning to end what exactly it is required for a support coordinator, from an audit perspective, from an end product perspective, the relationship side, and really put that framework together, then embedded the technology within. So we don't have an audit team because we don't need one, right? So we don't know audit team, come audit, we don't even need to prepare. It's just there. So it's just about thinking exactly. And again, technology should aid that side. So we've then built in automation that aids. We don't have technology that is taking over. So for example, when we're writing reports or so on, we've already got the information. We can add that information in, which means we can be effective if we don't have enough funding, for example, stuff like that. So we were also talking about quality from memory. So we were talking about quality and so on. I was interested to see how this talk about mandatory registration comes in around this balance between, we've got this issue with pricing and we've got this, talk about different quality for what people get for the price that they're paying, for lack of a better, with the participants. Does anyone want to touch on their thoughts on mandatory registration, how that filters into what's coming?
You want me to start first?
Go for it.
There was an NDIS document has been released recently. I think that's come with the recent price changes. Is the comparing the data in terms of how many, we got data of how many registered provider and how many non-registered provider. Now the data has shown that, I can only speak on behalf of Allied Health, okay? In terms of Allied Health business, the registered provider number does actually go down. However, the non-registered provider numbers goes up. You actually come to a net of increasing of the Allied Health, increasing of the providers. Now, what the predictions to me is, this is interesting. Now, I'm not too sure it's because NDI is such a genius or it just happened by luck. Now, what I'm trying to say is...
Definitely genius.
We never know. Maybe they are that intelligent. Maybe they are. Because what happened is...
Maybe. No possibility.
So with what happened if with the increase of registered provider, that would become form a body to kind of counteract what NDIS is going to do. But interestingly, with the increase of the non-registered provider, in that case, it kind of counteract the power of the registered provider. So it actually does create, from NDIS perspective, it does create a health balance of price control. So what happens is if there's too many registered provider or go on registered provider, that may be may not be an advantage for NDIS. But because of those exist, because they help to bring the price down as well. So, and data does actually show that there's more non-registered provider has been happening in the NDIS industry. So this is what I'm saying. I'm not too sure it's by luck or it's actually a fairly genius move.
Well, the downside of that is regulation and audits.
I do agree. But this is from their perspective,
which reflects on
exactly. But then, however, I'm not disagreeing the point. But from NDIS, sometimes we're not too sure what their primary goals. Their primary goal now is to decrease the funding, minimize the funding, or they actually put. I'm not saying that they don't care about the quality, but we need to. It's very unfortunately, India is very seasonal, so depend on what do they want at that period. Yeah.
I think this is the first time I've seen actually a kind of mass exit for service providers, support coordinators. There is a lot of people kind of getting out of the industry.
You see that data in your...
I see it when we get notified from it, where you've got your bigger players where they're all registered, all the rest of it, and you're like, no way they would close down that stream of their side of the company. then you've got the smaller players as well. So I think regardless of if you're registered or non-registered, I think everyone's actually feeling it at the moment. And this is probably the first time I've seen such a mass exit of people getting out of the NDIS. They're going, I just can't do it anymore. I can't keep up. I financially can't keep up. Even when they're registered, they're like, we have to go through the registration process and the audit and the this and the that and all those extra expenses. If you're not getting extra funding, like your support coordinators or your plan managers, so they're really feeling the pinch.
Is that a good thing or not? I mean, what I mean is, fact is there are some dodgy providers, some or a lot. So they're the ones that are exiting.
But even the good ones are exiting. Even the good ones that we've seen for years, and they have amazing reputations and names and they're doing the right thing, they're still just saying it's not worth
difficult.
it.
And,
It's too hard.
That there's a bit of a common thread I heard, and that is it's difficult because you've got to almost have the bandwidth to be able to afford to do it, but it's running your operations in a sophisticated and lean way. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to have such a big business to do it, but you really need to look at tools to help you to look at your data and manage your debtors. And, we shouldn't really have debtors in the NDIS, but we have debts, lots of manual claims that don't go through and all sorts of things. So I think it's your tools. You really need to focus on those tools. That's a common thing that I've heard from everyone here, that systems that they use. So,
And how many have read the IPC document that got put out when the pricing arrangements came out, the Independent Pricing Committee report? If you read it, from what I got from it, is the NDIS don't know the difference in terms of quality. So that was a key common theme that I got, that they said that here's the pricing per hour, but they don't know what you're actually doing if you're a high quality provider or not. Now, I see that as both sides.
Well, two organizations, right?
Yeah, well, I'm saying like when they're pushing out pricing, the IPC was essentially saying that because people are kind of putting when they're invoicing, for example, they're putting it under the same line item, so there's no real information. So what I mean by that is mini revolution of mine is, for example, care providers, allied health providers. What I see as a support coordinator is not many of them are actually communicating the non-face-to-face supports that they do. So when you're looking at if they're a complex client, you're not actually communicating the stuff that goes in every day, maybe every week or whatever it may be. There's a nurse or there's something going on that has to communicate to that individual, right, or their staff members, about what it actually takes to support that person that shift. So as support coordinators, it's natural for us, right? So we track everything. Any support coordinators would know you track every piece of communication, everything is normal. But the rest of the community doesn't necessarily do that as much. And I've worked with a couple recently, and they started tracking. And I think Mo was mentioning that she was 6 or 7 hours per week for that one client. It was highly complex that she was doing, her team was doing, that services that we can charge for.
You've got to also then make sure that that's covered at review time.
Exactly. So there's a lot of this where I think that us as a community can be doing a better job of actually communicating what it takes to provide quality services, for sure. And then also on the NDIS side, obviously they have to listen to what that is.
But I think making you registered doesn't make you quality, and making you non-registered doesn't make you not quality either. You're going to get a mixed bag of both. So I think if anything, the NDIA should be focusing on a bare minimum qualification. Just my own personal experience. If you're a support worker and you're dealing with someone with high complex mental health with behavioural issues, you need to know the bare basics of what to do to look after them. You can't just grab someone off the street, chuck them in there and charge an hourly rate, which a lot of people are doing, whether you're registered or not. So I think
That's not hard.
Instead of going through the registered versus the non-registered, I think the standard should be bare minimum qualification, that people can actually look after people with high complex disabilities or mental health. I think that's what they should be focusing on, and just meet in the middle somewhere.
So there's another interesting point, but from the not registered provider is, let's say for a lot of pricing arrangement and other health price things like that, because it's kept at a certain amount, regardless of your registered provider or non-registered provider, you can still charge the cap amount. So what happened is it's kind of implied that you're punishing the registered provider, because as a registered provider, you have to do a lot more to achieve you do the total audit to get the registrations. But however, with all this extra work, you're still charging exactly the same as a non-registered provider. So I think as a business, you need to think about in yourself what type of population and service that you want to provide. there's no right or wrong answer.
Pros and cons
Exactly.
into,
You had to evaluate yourself. Yeah.
We are definitely most likely going to go over time. But I wanted to throw it out again. Thank you so much. But if there's anyone else who has any questions or any topics they wanted to go for, yeah.
Hi everyone. Thank you so much for valuable information and really campus today. I'm Nadia. I'm working for Service Australia. As you guys know, Service Australia is supporting people with disability and carers. To me, I'm sorry, no, I have to say, I want to kick this. This is what I am. The nature of my job makes me defining who I am. So, to my understanding, a lot of customers coming and throwing feedback about the process of a claim to get the NDIS is very, very complicated, especially for the new arrival refugees that there's not translated materials out there. And also they're coming and tell us, okay, we have a child with a disability here and just we are waiting for the services. I believe a lot of people out there have been left unsupported just because of the complexity of the claims to make that one. So my question is, as a panel, as a provider, have you guys provided feedback for the NDIS to make it easier, simpler for the process of those families?
Can I just say, it's interesting, and it's not a negative about you. And when we heard from Milena, you all assume that person should know. Like Plan Partners, one of the biggest providers, they're dealing with the NDIS. Someone from Services Australia, you should be able to escalate up through. But we're all in brown paper bags. We don't hear, and it's frustrating, isn't it? So even though we're in large organisations, departments, it just demonstrates that we don't have that access, which is frustrating. So
we're coming together to
yeah.
changes to this. So
Have you got a comment on that?
Yeah, got a comment on that. So I met recently with a plan management company, and they said they will help people get onto the NDIS, but then they'll charge them $1,000 if they get the funding. So they said it's no win, no pay. Yeah. So I went straight over. It was at the Sydney Disability Expo. So I went straight to the NDIS stand and told them, and they went over to talk to Earl.
Yeah, no, can I just say, from a not-for-profit perspective, and just so you know, my business doesn't have any clients from Leukodystrophy Australia. My daughter actually was a client, but she's registered as a conflict of interest. I don't actually deal with her. I have another client manager, but she's actually the only client we have who has a leukodystrophy on purpose. But the point is that with leukodystrophy, we have advocates, and they help people to get on the scheme. We actually deal with some support coordination pro bono, who assist pro bono. And in fact, they assist when we have, I'll call them members, they're not really members, but people we support might be on the scheme as well. So I'm not answering your question there, but they might have support coordinators in Queensland or wherever they are. They may or may not be effective. They may or may not know the skills, but we actually deal with some pro bono support coordinators who assist, not to take the client on, but to assist in that role, in that way as well. So I didn't answer your question, but Mo's probably got a comment on that.
Hi, I was just going to say, I can help you after, but I help people to get into the NDIS for free. Like, we don't take anything, just a bit of access. But also, there are free translator services through the government for NDIS for participants and especially refugees. So I used to work with them in WA. Sorry, not talking about WA retires. So afterwards, if anyone wants that free service, you can actually engage them for your service. So if you are a provider, support coordinator, allied health, and you're having a meeting with someone that is from a refugee background or who needs, they will actually do the translating for free. So I can give you my card.
Now, inside the department, I think, that'd be agitating.
That was going to be my feedback. If you've got a lot of people coming in and that's a gap, I think internally with the company that you work for, you need to kind of advocate and say, we need a specific person in here to be able to help people with the NDIS.
Typically, like a lot of refugees, I can see the child, 15 years old, the child in the wheelchair.
Yeah.
And they don't have that fund to go to see specialists. But what India is asking about is specialist reports. And they're waiting for 6 months of the work with the specialists.
Yeah.
this is situation is like you can see it's how frustrated.
And a lot of doctors don't understand the scheme. They don't know how to fill in a form.
Yes.
So, yeah, and the NDIS probably doesn't want that many people to, at the moment, from a dollars and cents perspective.
And plan managers definitely don't pay any people on the scheme. That's all. I said plan managers definitely don't help people get on the scheme or charge $1,000. That's a special case. I'm glad you dobbed them in on that one. As well, I think we're noticing that there is a slower release of plans that are happening as well. So not only do you have the challenge of finding people to help get all the paperwork to get them on there, and then it's completely up to the NDIA of how many plans are getting released. It's very tricky, but my only suggestion as well would be if you don't get on the first time, just keep trying as well. So
because they withdraw their interest after so many weeks of waiting for the process, and then they withdraw their interest.
I think a lot of the delays, maybe again, it's a bit cynical, but the delays are potentially on purpose to just delay things to happen. I saw the stats. I was reading the stats. The NDIS has a whole stats area, and there was a stat that talked about over 800,000 they're predicting by 2029. Well, what are we at now? 600,000, maybe more. Seven. So they're predicting 890, but then they're also talking about moving a big bunch of under nines off to foundation, to state government. So who knows? I mean, it's hard.
I think it is about like learning the hacks and who you can talk to, and there are different suburbs that you can get more assistance for depending what kind of criteria you're looking for. But also just to bring back to the start, we were talking about LACs and how they're asking for all this minimal information. That is to go against the reports that you guys are writing. So if the participant's saying, I've got a great life and I'm independent and I've got a lot of friends and I've got my family, and then the report is saying, actually, this person needs one-to-one, the planner is going to go off what the LAC is writing. So you guys need to be aware of that, and your participant needs to be aware of that, because the meeting that you have with the participant is very different to the reality that they're living at home. So all those things that you need to know before going into a meeting and being prepared. So the more you understand the scheme and how it works, the better you'll be able to navigate it.
And I think having this group as well, like it's really good to build your database. So know that everyone here, what we do well, what our expertise are. So that way when you do come across participants, you can go, okay, Mo is this one, this one's this one. So really start using these networking events to build your community network as well. So then okay, if I need an advocate, I can go here. If I need a plan manager, I can go here. If I need a support coordinator. So yeah, just start trialing errands. Some might fit with you, some you might work with. So just once you find your little database of people that you work with, I kind of just hold on to them.
And the shared knowledge.
And the shared knowledge
here as well.
Yeah.
So I might have a broken washing machine, and I ring the company. Sorry, I ramble, but ring the company and say, my washing machine's broken, fix it. And I might not realise, but there could be 10 people around the corner that have the same washing machine. But if we all collectively go and agitate, makes a big difference. So I think that's sharing that, hearing the stories, and maybe collectively being able to then agitate for change would be more impactful as part of one.
I have some templates if you need them that I can give you that would help, that we created for GPs. But also just quickly on he touched on the point, there could potentially be some peak charitable bodies that may want to be able to support that individual as well.
Find out the condition. Many charities have social workers working for them, like MND and whatever. So I would go to those charities, peak bodies, let's call them peak bodies. That would be an avenue as well.
There's also the federal government's Disability Gateway. They offer free phone advocacy, but the only way that you can access that advocacy is by calling the Disability Gateway. It's a 1-800 number. It's managed by Benevolent Society, who I...
That's Curious Gateway? The Curious Gateway?
No.
Oh, there's
no. Both funded by DFS, but Disability Gateway is a phone line. I'm going to confuse people because I'm plugging my old job. But anyway, it's a 1-800 phone number that you can call if you need help to navigate services. You don't have to be on the NDIS. Most people who call aren't. And if you're really stuck for help with getting on the NDIS, you can ask for the advocacy service, and they'll put you through to the National Advocacy Service, It's on the phone only. You'll never get to meet the advocate, but it is free. And there's usually only like a day or two wait for that advocate to call you back. So it's called Disability Gateway.
That concerns this, we cannot do it, but the staff I can share this. I actually have a question for everyone here is what's your biggest pain point at the moment? I'd love to know if everyone's got the same pain point, if it's different, if anyone wants to share what your biggest pain point is.
My biggest pain point is back ends.
Back end?
Just managing costs and making sure my staff aren't going overtime by a few hours regularly. And we have a combination of staff that are senior and staff that are not so senior.
Yes.
And I've come up with a system with Chris is we have a senior then for a senior then so not two seniors back to back, and not two juniors back to back.
So that I'm agent just became quick. And also it manages that cost.
Yeah. Any other pain points?
My biggest pain point is everyone being really reactive instead of responsive. So working with multiple providers, and instead of trying to work together, everyone's very quick to be like, no, this is your responsibility. No, this should have been done. Instead of being like, hey, this is the problem. Instead of being me and you against each other, how do we sort this problem together? So especially with funding being so tight and us having to work with, not being able to deliver an hour over the service or 15 minutes or whatever, and instead of being like, you should have done this, or you have to drop them off, or you have to do this, it's like, hey, we're a team. We're working for the best of the participant. How can we then come together? Everyone's just so reactive. Everyone's on the defensive, and it's like we're not getting ahead anywhere. We should, kind of like the washing machine problem, let's all come together and be like, hey, how can we work together moving forward?
Any other pain points? Yes.
I'm a speak to the allied health, but I don't represent them. I'm a neuropsychologist, and I find one report I write that evidences a cognitive impairment gets a client $220,000 of funding. And then another report that I write, which has even more evidence of a cognitive impairment and a psychosocial impairment and a physical impairment, and has heaps of evidence, and I think it's the greatest report I've ever done. They don't get as much funding, or they might even have their funding reduced, especially as I use words like mental health or psychology. And I was just wondering if you have any advice for the allied health. Like, I'm frightened for NDIS clients because every single client that I've ever been referred has always had an undiagnosed cognitive impairment or an intellectual disability. Every single one. And I've been doing this for 5 years. I've been a neuropsych for 10 years. I'm scared because I don't know, I'm not a registered provider. I don't want to be a registered provider. Sorry, I'm not sure. Should I have said that? My name's Sarah. But I just wondered if you had some advice for the allied health in the room. How do we communicate to NDIS how important allied health is? What would be your golden piece of advice? What can we do to advocate that we're important, we're necessary, people need us to evidence these disabilities? What's the golden nugget that we need to do? What should we do?
So it's an amazing question. First of all, one thing I see as a support coordinator is planners aren't allied health, right? That's one thing as a fact. They're not allied health, which means sometimes they don't understand your report, right? So a few things that we see, not only that, I'm not doing this as an excuse for planners, but sometimes they also have to, in a day, read maybe 30, 40 different reports, right? So again, when I think about it from our perspective, I go, okay, so what's the easiest way I can get across the key bits of information that they need to know as proper evidence, right? And that is from your perspective, you've got your cognitive assessments and all these different tools that you do to actually provide information. The other thing that I see across the industry is recommendations from an allied health professional only goes so far, right? So they can take it, or the planner would, again, they're not allied health. They go, okay, they're recommending this. The other thing that we're trying to input is the real world data of what that actually looks like. So for example, for me, again, very minuscule version of it, and it's very contextual to the individual, but is the incidents, the number of incidents, the time taken to respond to the incident, that's real for the NDIS, if that makes sense. The amount of hospital admissions. One thing that I see that people don't do is communicating the near misses, because there was support there. if that makes sense. So what I'm trying to do at the moment and trying to, kind of help with, and there's no real proper tools, and I know I've done a bit of work with ADT security or ADT care. They have a lot of AI cameras and all this sort of stuff, which we're using with one of these particular participants to track the amount of seizures, the falls, track the amount of time. Those are the things that when I go to ART and when I go to, which I shouldn't go to ART, but there were at this particular point in time, there was no advocate, so I got the opportunity to. They're asking those questions. They're asking in the real world for them, how is it actually impacting them through incidences, falls, outbursts, those, how many times has staff left the organization, for example, because of a psychosocial or particular behaviors or, that sort of thing.
Emma was going to say something.
When you're working as part of an allied health team, it's so important to be communicating what's in your report, finding out what you see in the other allied health team, that the other allied clinicians report. Excuse me. Because any discrepancy, they'll pick up on, and there's no going back from that. It's like, well, this person's saying this person's saying that. So we're really big on, so I'm a coordinator, and we're really big on the multidisciplinary team meetings to make sure everybody's reporting the same thing. And if you've got discrepancies, working out how you then report. How you then report that. So if there's other people, make sure you're talking to the participant, the decision maker, and the other allied health.
I'm just going to add one last thing to that. I believe the reason why your second amazing, incredible report didn't get as much funding is because anything mental health that NDIS is pulling out from. And when we did, so I was a planner in my past life, and when NDIA introduced mental health, they were very strict in our training, and they said, there's so many people out there with mental health, NDIS is only going to help 2.1% of the pointiest end. So you think about everyone that has mental health and has another diagnosis, it's easier for them to get into the scheme with autism or intellectual disability and then have a psychosocial diagnosis with that and see what we can manage inside. However, if you have someone who just has bipolar, or not just, but he has bipolar or schizophrenia, and they haven't had 30 plus hospital admissions, they haven't had a long history of treatment or resistant treatment, schizophrenia and things like that, it is very unlikely that they're going to get funding for that, and especially now. So before it was already like that, and now they're pushing everything back to the mental health, which we know is not perfect. So the reports have to be tailored more towards community pain.
And then the other thing is more the technical part of it is because NDI usually have the primary diagnosis, and then if you add on more, it may go into the secondary. I'm not too sure it's just the tertiary diagnosis. So sometimes what we do as a strategy is to pick the two most impactful diagnoses, because usually mental health psychosocial diagnosis, they usually come with a bunch, like schizophrenia, depression, and bipolar. So you may have to pick up the few most impactful diagnoses and hammer that on the report, rather than like scatter around like a shotgun, like on multiple issues. So this is strategies I do usually, and it does help sometimes. Not guaranteed, but yeah, it does help. Primary and secondary diagnosis. Yeah.
The last thing is format makes a massive difference. Oh, it is huge.
ChatGPT.
If I've read some amazing reports, right? The detail is amazing, but the format, I already knew when I read it that the planner's not reading this. They're not going to get what you want to get out of it. I know it sounds so simple, but use tables, use colors. I know it's so simple, but draw their eyes to where you want them to see, please.
And at the top of the report is probably where you want to make your initial points.
Yeah.
As well.
So definitely
they might spend 1 minute.
Do that. I see a lot of SIL reports, for example, without like a table to talk about what the actual care is going to look like and why and what the risks are. They kind of communicate that they need it, but they don't tell them exactly what is needed. For example, just for as a particular example,
data collection in a issue, and data collection is a sore point I find the most providers, because just getting support workers to provide the data is like pulling blood out of a stone. And so they wonder why, an escalation happens or they don't get funding or their funding gets knocked back. And I'm forever having to explain I actually wrote my own little training course about it. Why it's so important to be collecting all this type of data. And then it also brings me back to what the lady was saying at the back, transparency and working together as a holistic team with your allied health GPs, your psychs, your support coordinators, support workers, everyone. Everyone has to work holistically together because essentially we are all working to support a participant and that they're the key person there that requires the assistance. And so we need to keep that in mind when we're doing that. And so when you're not collecting the data, when you're not providing the evidence, and you're not looking at exactly what needs to go in there, you're just doing them a disservice.
You know what? So just to finalise, I guess there's a couple points there. As an example, I recently got a call from the Mount Druitt Hospital team. They're amazing, right? They had paid for these reports because they knew they didn't have this particular, I think it was a neuropsych or so on. Anyway, their reports were incredible. But what they didn't have, and I knew straight away, is the actual data because they're not set up to track the incidents. And that's the reason why this person didn't get that funding. They go, oh, why didn't we get it? I go, because do you have incidents? Do you have near misses? Do you have all of those things? And that was a primary example. And they have direct access to the NDIS. They talk to each other, right? Because the NDIS don't want people in hospital. It's actually more costly anyway. So they're trying to get things done quickly and appropriately. But they didn't have that data naturally to be able to communicate.
It's just on that point. So yes, people might complete incident reports every day or every other day or whatever, and there might be a lot of data in that. So it's not just what is in that; it's how can you pull that stuff out. So if you're getting people to write paragraphs of information, that's not the sort of data you can easily extract because you're going to be spending hours. We had
and sub-data can't even be done in an incident report.
Correct. So that's the point.
Needs to be in a behavioural situation.
What we do, I'll tell you what we've done. So we had, again, I guess I'm lucky I have a software background, but we built an incident reporting system years ago, but we focused on, so that was good. And we had data columns or specific data capture in that report on instances or incidences of these things happening. We had a client who went to tribunal and the lawyer said, we want 6 months worth of data, blah, blah, blah. We want to see all this. And the advocate said, when do you want that? And it was delivered to them the next day. And they were shocked. They had no idea. So what we've gone since then is now we have an event logging tool because you can have incidents, but, we have someone who refuses a shower every day in a cell. They are incidents theoretically, but what we do is now we have a master incident and then we have an event log. And the event logging tool captures maybe 4 or 5 fields of information, and then we link it back to the original incident. So then the event logging tool is easier for staff to use because it might take them 30 seconds, a minute to complete. So I think thinking about not just what goes in, but how the fields of information are important as well.
I always say this is the final thing, but there's so much you can talk about. But is often I see uncommunicated areas. So, for example, there's a particular participant that I have that has seizures, and they wanted to address, or we did all the reporting, but one area was AT wasn't explored. You go, well, what do you mean? It's seizures. They have seizures, but they needed someone to assess whether or not assistive technology was actually going to make it easier, reduce care. A lot of the times some of that comes into play, and they don't tell you until you get to ART. But think about the fringe things that like assistive technology is a big one. Whenever you get an S100 rejection, they talk about value for money. That comes into it. So what other options are you trying? That also goes into behaviors. For example, like, is it a skill thing? You need to rule that out. Is it a skill thing for workers? If it's not, you need to show them why, those sort of things. We are like 20 minutes over, but I know this is a great conversation. Is everyone okay? I think maybe one last question. Who wants to do the honours? It better be a good one. No. Oh,
can I just say, the plan is with this to create a LinkedIn initially, and a LinkedIn presence for building bridges, but then topics from these sorts of forums will then continue on in there, so that there's ongoing communication. So I think that's going to happen.
I've got a last question if no one else does. Is anybody else noticing that the NDIS is not funding
adequate SIL supports or high enough SDA, what I'm seeing is a lot of adults are having to live with very elderly parents because they can't find safe, secure, long-term accommodation for their person with a disability. Is anyone else seeing that as
If you've seen over 100 providers, many of them with SILs, I can tell you that the overall trend is reducing SILs packages in the last big months. So there is a definite downward pressure on the SILs values per package.
I know we subsidise services, so we're, like I mentioned, someone that might be active overnight, but we'll subsidise that because they're just not funding that, and it's you take a hit, but you can't go and overclaim now with especially with new case. I mean, empirical hands, you literally have to claim for that, almost forcing a provider to take the hit and subsidise.
There have been statements made that they expect a certain amount of growth in NDIS from new participants, but the funding mechanism for those new participants is to reduce the funding on the existing participants. And if you look at the numbers in the last release from NDIA or NDIS on that, that's exactly the way it read. So we are expecting to increase packages by X percentage, new packages. And then when you look at the value that goes with that, it was clear that if you looked at the total value that NDIS expected to incur, that there had to be reductions on existing packages. And that's not going to happen on in-home support. It's going to happen on the bigger numbers, which is all SILs related.
Is there any collective action around that from the providers?
So I was, I'll kind of answer your question from my perspective, is the NDIS wasn't all, like in some cases, you've got participants that are going to need specific high level of care, right? But what we tend to find as support coordinators, for example, is the first response is always funding, which is fair in some cases. But in others, it could be a skill development for the support workers that are causing an increase in hours, for argument's sake. So I think there's a balance that needs to be taken with the strategies and the why and the funding around that person and what's the purpose. So often we just go, they need it. Okay, but what do we, obviously it's contextual because some participants need a certain amount of care because they've got high clinical care needs and so on. That's fine. But why? What are we doing here? Are we funding one-to-one support because they live alone, but can they develop that skill? Are we actually just putting a support worker in that house just to babysit, or are we putting that support worker in with a purpose to develop skill, develop capacity to eventually be able to, to live independently? We had a participant that had 66 days out of the year with multiple incidences a day, for example, and we sat down and go, hang on, this isn't working. We're just putting support workers in for no reason. So we go, okay, well, what's the plan here? We had a chat, we put a plan in place, and he's had one this year, and we're reducing from 24/7 one-to-one down. Now that's one example, but it's
so I think it's a good point. There's so the purpose of shorter funding cycles is to be more responsive to immediate needs. So you can imagine sitting in NDIS and you see a request from all these providers on ever increasing package sizes, but what's not contained in there is when does that end? So when does that pressure come off? And they don't have the visibility of when the pressure comes off. So now their response is, well, if we create shorter funding cycles, we can respond to shorter term needs and see the end to it. So there is sort of a logic to what they're doing, but having designed the system not to provide future visibility on savings long term, you've got some accountant in the background sort of saying, well...
it's frustrating. People are becoming widgets again, and that's not what the scheme... But that's, I think, where a lot of this seems to be, unfortunately, going because of the dollars and cents.
The people that are suffering the most are the ones with the higher complex care needs, which is, I guess, specifically to your question. So I think what we're tending to do is, historically, when we first started, for example, 9 years ago now, we had a lot. Huntington's as an example, we got 10 hours for the year, and anyone who works with Huntington's know you're going to be doing like 120 hours. It's just not even a question. So what we just continually ART kept going, and just eventually over time, you build up enough precedents, for example, through ART that you different avenues where then the NDIS, it's to some extent becomes normal. So when I get Huntington's now, a lot of the plans that come through, which wasn't back the same before, there's a certain expectation of an amount of funding for that particular individual. And I know the NDIS is pushing back now, but
They actually reported that up until about 2022, maybe still, but they literally showed you the average amount for someone with Huntington and someone with MS, some of the key conditions. Are they still doing it? Yeah, they stopped about 2022. Back in 2022, Huntington's was, for a SIL, was 519 or 500 and something thousand. In the community was about 200 and something thousand. So they literally reported that, but they stopped that quickly, obviously.
The reason why I bring up ART is because, in my opinion, it's ultimately speaking, if any action needs to be taken, it needs to become a hearing. There's a proper precedent. There's, those sort of things happening in order for action to be taken if it is something systemic. Because otherwise, if it gets lost in the system, it's going to be nowhere. Do you know what I'm saying? So
to answer your question, there's definitely a spotlight on SIL. We have noticed a big reduction, and we've noticed that things are starting to get tighter. Same with like your short-term accommodation. Like the NDIA will be like, you need to now ask for more information. You need to now. They start kind of. There's definitely a spotlight on there. So what you're noticing, I think, is quite correct at the moment. So I've noticed it as well myself, just from the plan management side of things.
I like the answer though. Upskill the staff so that you've got a higher calibre of staff who can do the delivery. And I like the NDIS's response. They just came back to us and said, okay, if you need one-on-one for this participant overnight, we need to see 4 to 6 weeks of nighttime data. So we've now got the poor parents that had to delay the person moving in for 4 to 6 weeks, and they're up during the night writing down everything that happens. And I'm going to add near misses now because of this, so thank you.
there's technology if families want. I can give you some details. ADT. Last week we did a presentation and he was showing. Reach out to John from ADT. They've got AI technology, cameras, all this sort of stuff that you can potentially put. I'm sure there's other providers as well. He was in the forefront of my mind, but it's a definite.
The NDIS might fund it since they've made the parents stay up.
Well, this particular family have gone and done it themselves because it was impossible for them to keep waking up. So then you're grabbing that information. But
hey, to fund it, you need to provide the evidence.
Yeah. So I think we'll end it there. I want to thank everyone for coming. And a massive thank you to Noor, who obviously supported the event with his food, which is probably cold. We purposely did it to come at the end so it was warm. But thank you. And to our amazing panelists, thank you so much for the information, and also to all of you. Yes, next month topic was be the last thing is we're doing on HR. It's performance management. We've got a HR specialist coming out to provide some information to everyone, and then we'll have some other organizations potentially that can provide some guidance and support as well that will be available for chat. But thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate it. And let's eat.